Is the Raiders' current roster good enough to make a massive trade to go up to the top of the draft and get their quarterback? That plus a whole lot more comes up on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 2nd, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, it's awesome. We appreciate that. The show continues to grow. That's because of you and my man, Ari. Ari does a fantastic job each and every day, making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. That's because of my man, Ari. You can check him out on Twitter, at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254 and the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts will come up in segment number 3 of today's show. Segment number 2, Adam Rank from NFL.com, NFL Network, was a guest on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Monday. As a matter of fact, I was filling in on the morning tailgate. Me and Vinny Bonsignor, we had an opportunity to talk to him, and he had some really good things to say about the Raiders and answered the question that I had to say about, is the Raiders roster set up right now where he could see them making a trade to the top of the draft to go get their guy in Jaden Daniels. To hear his thoughts about the silver and black and that answer to that question coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, just kind of scattershoot news and notes collected over the course of the day. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. Off top, the Raiders re-signed Jordan Meredith. He was a guard that, was able to be, available when needed for the Raiders. And, of course, we've been talking a lot about the Raiders' offensive line, in particular the right side, because there's so much up in the air when it comes to the tackle spot and the guard position. Well, Jordan Meredith provides more depth and just another guy that Tom Telesco and company had decided to bring back. And so the Raiders have been very, as a matter of fact, very picky, I should say, when it comes to free agency. They haven't gone out there and just spent a whole lot of money like I actually thought that they were going to do. They've actually been a lot more frugal as far as I'm concerned. Of course, they had the big splash when it came to Christian Wilkins, but they haven't gone crazy in free agency. As a matter of fact, they've lost, 7 guys. Josh Jacobs to the Packers, Bilal Nichols to the Cardinals, Jermaine Illuminor to the Giants, Austin Hooper to the Patriots, Brandon Parker to the Niners, Tyler Hall to the Eagles, and then Amik Robertson to the Lions. Those are all guys that they lost. The guys that they signed from the outside so far, the big ticket, which was Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle from Miami, quarterback Gardner Minshew, tight end Harrison Bryant, and running back Alexander Mattison. That's all they've done as far as outside free agency gone. And then they've re-signed their own, including Jordan Meredith, who re-signed on Monday. Center Andre James is obviously the center of that offensive line. Running back Amir Abdullah, both defensive tackles Adam Butler and John Jenkins, linebacker Kanai Moaga, and then and that was it. And Isaiah Palmau, also the safety, they re-signed him as well. So 7 guys of their own that they've re-signed, 4 outside guys that they've signed, and then they've lost 7 guys. 7 guys from the team as well. So they've really been a lot more frugal than I thought they were going to do, even though the Christian Wilkins signing was huge. But that was something that was such a priority. They wanted to make sure that got taken care of. So they did do that, but wanted to pass along the note about Jordan Meredith, again, providing more depth along that offensive line. Is he the end-all, be-all? Is he a guy that I think solves all their problems? Absolutely not. But he could be a guy that they need in a rotational piece, along with a DJ Fluker, along with a Dalton Wagner, along with a Thayer Munford, right? All those guys could be used on that right side of the line, whether it's a guard position or at the tackle position. As far as Michael Penix, and I know that we talk about FanDuel, and FanDuel is the title sponsor of the show, but I did find it pretty interesting on Twitter on Monday that, according to BetMGM, the Michael Penix hype train is continuing to roll when it comes to teams and then where they are as far as the odds-on favorites to be selected to select Michael Penix. The Vikings right now are the odds-on favorite at plus 275. The Raiders right behind them at plus 350. the Broncos at plus 500, the Seahawks at plus 600, and the Giants at plus 1,200 to sign Michael Penix Jr. So things are obviously heating up for him. Our guy Jordan Schultz from Bleacher Report, good friend of the show, good friend of mine, hit us up and said things are heating up for Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr. Sources said he had dinner with Giants in Seattle after his pro day, followed by a private workout with the Vikings in Seattle. He'll also have top 30s with the Broncos, Falcons, Raiders, and Commanders per multiple sources. Again, that's my guy Jordan Schultz from Bleacher Report. So just everything is really starting to get rolling for Michael Penix. Some of that, look at the calendar. It's April 2nd. You can say that a lot of that has to do with, the agents are also putting that out there. They want to go ahead and continue to build up as much hype for their player leading up to the draft. He could end up getting selected by a team, even the Raiders, that say, you know what, the hype is too real. He won't be there at the end of round 1. He won't be in there in round 2. So we have to go and get him at 13. Like, all this different interest is going to be tried to be manufactured and generated to get these players drafted as high as possible. So take it for what it's worth, but that's out there right now. Again, that was according to BetMGM. And, of course, FanDuel will have their numbers sooner rather than later when it comes to who's going to go where in the upcoming NFL draft. I also found this to be pretty interesting when it comes to quarterbacks. And I don't know a whole lot about this guy, and I'm not going to try to act like I know a whole lot. But according to multiple reports, former Ohio State quarterback Corey Curtis has a private workout on Friday with the Raiders. Now, Curtis, yeah, he was there with Ohio State, but he spent a couple seasons with Gannon. At Gannon, he threw for 5,134 passing yards and 47 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Again, he started at Ohio State, but he transferred to Bryant and then down once again to Gannon. Apparently, he has a special arm and has had 5 NFL teams schedule a workout with him the past couple days, including the Raiders, who are supposedly going to work him out on Friday. Do I think that's going to be a big deal? No. I saw a little bit of video of him throwing the ball. Looks like a big kid. Looks like he's got a big arm, but at the end of the day, that's who he is as far as I'm concerned, a big kid with a big arm. Do I think that he's going to be the end-all, be-all solution for the Raiders at quarterback? No, but just thought I'd pass that along, that apparently that workout is going to happen on Friday. And then one more little note here for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast news and note. I thought it was pretty cool to see the email from the NFL on Monday about performance-based pay for players' performance across the league in 2023. And what this is the NFL players will receive $393.8 million in performance-based pay for their play during the 2023 season. The performance-based program is a collectively bargained benefit that compensates all players based upon their playing time and their salary levels. So, Q, what does this mean to us? Why are you telling me this? Well, because former Raider, former 4th-round pick guard John Simpson played for the Ravens in 2023 on a 1-year deal, earned the highest amount amongst all the NFL players in the league year in the performance-based pay program. He made $974,613 in distribution, which nearly doubled his 2023 salary. He was a 2020 fourth-round draft pick from Clemson for the Raiders, who played the 2023 season under a 1-year minimum salary contract, participated in all but 7 plays on offense and almost 19% of the club's special teams play. So basically, a guy that was ran out of town, and was basically proven or shown that he couldn't cut it along the Raiders' offensive line, even though they selected him in the 4th round out of Clemson, has found his way. And I always cheer for guys like that. Like, it didn't work out with the Raiders for one reason or the other. Fine, no problem. He goes on, goes to Baltimore, bets on himself, signs a contract that's basically a minimum, plays his tail off, turns that into a free agent deal. He's now in New York with the Jets, but he, on top of that, gets a $974,613 got a bonus on top of that for just playing as much as he did for Baltimore. Everything but 7 plays on offense and almost 19% of the club's special teams plays. I thought that was a really cool little nugget for guard John Simpson. Not mad at him at all. Again, just because he's a former Raider doesn't mean that I don't want him to be successful or any other guy to be successful. The league is hard, man. Sticking around the league is hard. It didn't work out with the Raiders. It's working out now for Simpson. He did really well in Baltimore, and now he parlayed that into a free agent deal with the New York Jets. So that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, hear from Adam Rank from NFL Network, where he believes the Raiders are as a roster, what he thinks about what happened under Antonio Pierce the final 9 games of the season when he took over November 1st, and if the roster is set up in position where they can make a big-time trade to get to the top of the draft and go get their quarterback. All that comes up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of our great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, which is BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? Now, anyone who knows me or has listened to me or even saw my Monday, it'd probably mean I'd be doing another radio show because that's just how your boy gets down. But obviously, there's a lot more things in life that are important than just doing radio shows. So the best way to squeeze special things into your schedule is to know what's important to you and how to make it a priority. Well, sometimes we don't know how to decipher that, including myself. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you should. Give BetterHelp a try. Why not? It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Switch the therapist anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into some sound bites from Adam Rank from NFL.com, NFL Network. He was a guest on the Morning Tailgate on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Monday. I was filling in there. Me and Vinny Bonsignor, we did the show. Matter of fact, we'll be doing the show the next couple of days as Clay and Lindsay are out vacationing. So we'll go ahead and hold it down. And I've been holding it down on Unnecessary Roughness, on the Morning Tailgate, on ESPN Radio. Monday, I hit the trifecta. I did all 3. 9 hours of radio, 3 different shows, and of course, the podcast will start the day off. And hey, I would have it no other way. That's what I'm all about. I enjoy myself. It's a blessing to have that opportunity. So yeah, don't ever think that don't feel bad for me because of what I'm doing. I'm working a lot. Again, it's right up my alley. It's what I would do every day of the week and twice on Sunday if given the opportunity. But he was a really good guest. He was fantastic, and he's been a guy that was on the record of being very high on the Raiders, even when they hired Josh McDaniels, and clearly that didn't work out. A lot of us were very high on the Raiders when they hired Josh McDaniels because of the weapons that were being added to the team, and I thought that Josh McDaniels was going to be a really good coach. As far as in the red zone, I thought he was going to really help the Raiders maximize. Well, fast forward, we all know how that didn't shake out. So here we are now talking about the 2024 season, seeing what the Raiders were able to do under Antonio Pierce, seeing how good that defense was, and realizing if they could figure out a way to make that offense come together and fix the offense that clearly was broken under Josh McDaniels in the last year and a half and get it solved. And a lot of it has to do with the quarterback position. We know Gardner Minshew's there. We know that Aiden O'Connell's there, and they've both won games. Neither one of those guys I look at as long-term solutions at the quarterback position, but that's just me. So I want you to hear a couple sound bites from Adam Rank, what he had to say about the Raiders. And the first one is just on the decision that GM Tom Telesco is going to have, because it's a little bit different. A lot of these teams that are in this draft, they look at the quarterback position. They have to have it. We talked about on Monday's show have to haves and like to haves. And I said that the quarterback position is something that's a like to have, but very close and leaning heavily to, have to have, just because, again, you want to go get your franchise guy. But, you look at the Bears, they have to have a quarterback. The Commanders, they have to have a quarterback. The Patriots, they have to have a quarterback, right? And there's other teams that I look at, like the Broncos, they have to have a quarterback. There's team like the Vikings, they have Sam Darnold right now. They have to have a quarterback, right? The Raiders have a couple guys that have started and have won in the league, right? And even Gardner Minshew almost got the Colts to the playoffs in 2023. So that's why I called it a like to have. So Adam Rank was breaking down these quarterbacks, breaking down these teams. He doesn't think as many are going to get drafted in the top 10 as others do. But here he is talking about the Raiders, Tom Telesco, and the decision that they're going to have to make at 13 and why it's a little bit different, and it has to do with the roster. Here's Adam Rank from NFL.com, was on our show on Monday.
With the Raiders, they're in a very interesting situation because, again, I would rather have a good team and then get the quarterback, but I think the Raiders are kind of there. Mm-hmm. The Raiders are a good team. 8 wins. Could have been, things could have been better, obviously, if Josh McDaniels hadn't started the season, but I really love what the Raiders have done. We saw what Antonio Pierce did for this franchise, and anybody who has familiarity of the Raiders franchise going back to when Al Davis owned it, he always hired young, up-and-coming guys. John Madden was a young, up-and-coming guy. Even Tom Flores, who had played for the Raiders, obviously. And then John Gruden. That's where he really found his success. So Antonio Pierce really is the kind of Art Shell. Was
Yeah.
is that Mike Shanahan. Geez Louise. Like, he was well ahead of the curve on a lot of things. So I think the Raiders kind of fall into that, and I think they're going to be very competitive. I'll just say they should make the playoffs this year. And you go out there and what they did in free agency, they had the number one defense in the league, obviously, when Antonio Pierce once he took over. You had Christian Wilkins. The Raiders are one of those teams where I would be, you know what, if you want to go for the quarterback, I get it. If you want to draft a quarterback like Kerryon Arnold or somebody like that, get it as well. Fashanu also could be available at 13. So I think the Raiders, Tom Telesco is going to have a real interesting decision what he's going to do right there at 13.
So there you go. I thought that was a really good breakdown right there of the decision that Tom Telesco is going to have to make. Also, love what he had to say about Antonio Pierce and talking about Al Davis back in the day when he was always ahead of the curve, hiring the young, innovative coaches. And, the Raiders have that opportunity with Antonio Pierce. And, watching AP and the Raiders play in 2023, well, obviously AP wasn't playing, but him coach the Raiders playing in 2023 really gave that Raiders feeling again. And that's not a big surprise, right? A lot of Raider Nation said that, AP helped find their identity again. They're getting back to playing Raider football. The Patriot way is long gone. It's all about the silver and black. And obviously that was a big theme when Josh McDaniels got fired. They immediately came out on their social medias with the Raider way, the Patriot way is out, all this, that, and the other. And AP really took that to the other level. So with what you just heard from Adam Rank, I doubled down and basically said, okay, with all that being said, with the roster in the place that it's at, with you liking what, you're seeing from the Raiders, would it be smart? Does it make sense for the Raiders to go all in, give up the farm to go up to number 2 to go get Jaden Daniels? It's going to be at least 3 first-round picks, and then you're going to have to put plenty of sugar on top as well. Would it be worth it for the Raiders because of the position that they're in as an 8-win team? Here's Adam Rank answering that question.
I mean, that's a big swing. And the Raiders, that's the good thing about, doing so well in free agency that you could probably afford to do that. It depends on how much you're willing to mortgage the future for Jaden Daniels. I get it. I understand it. But at the same time, I think that it's too rich because the risk is far too great for these teams. You see a lot of these ball clubs that have traded up to get quarterbacks. I mean, the 49ers really got away with it with Trey Lance. Like, nobody really talks about that. But even for a team like the Bears, who didn't have to give up that much to move up to number 10 to take Justin Fields, like, you're still paying a price for that. A lot of these teams, like Carolina, is going to be sitting there for a long time, kind of wishing, you know what, it would be nice to have a DJ Moore type of player, but, you do have your quarterback. So the Raiders are in a very unique position where I understand the science behind both of them. Like, both of them make sense. Like, it's one of those things, like, if you want to go to the Cosmo or you want to go to the Venetian, you're like, yeah, I'm good with either one. Like, both of them have I get it. Like, you're not going to have to twist my arm either way. I'm going to have an enjoyable time wherever we go. But my preference would be to build the team and then just kind of see what you got. And again, you got Gardner there that will get you to the playoffs. So, and if you've decided next year, like, this isn't it, I would make the move for the quarterback next season.
So there's Adam Rank right there responding to my question about if it's worth it or not. He's still in the position of just build the team, don't give up the farm. The risk is not worth the reward. Of course, and he quotes a couple teams that have given up the ultimate draft capital to move up, and it hasn't worked out. And we remember those, right? And so that is something to think about. Obviously, it didn't work out for the 49ers and Trey Lance. Now he's in Dallas with the Cowboys. You could say that it didn't really work out for the Rams when they traded up to go get Jared Goff, except for they did get to a Super Bowl. They lost, and then they ultimately traded Goff to Detroit. They got Stafford back. We know they won, right? Carson Wentz, the Eagles traded up to go get him. He did help them get to the playoffs. He was in the MVP running when he got injured, and then Nick Foles led him the rest of the way, won the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz, obviously not worth the salt at this stage of the game, and his NFL career is just about over. So, there's plenty of examples of it not working out, right? He mentions the Bears and Justin Fields. He mentions the Carolina Panthers, and that's a great example. They gave up the farm to go get their guy, and they didn't have anything around them. So it didn't really work out for them now. Now, it could, as they're building around him right now, around Bryce Young. And if he all of a sudden turns into that franchise quarterback, then they can look back and say, yeah, see, we had the plan all along. But if it doesn't work out, then it'll be another one of those, yeah, see, it didn't work. But, my counter argument to that is, but look what the Raiders have. They're not in a Carolina position where they don't have wide receivers. They don't have weapons. They don't have a run game. Like literally Carolina the cupboard was dry. They traded DJ Moore and they gave up all that draft capital. So they had nothing. They had Adam Thielen was their number one weapon, their number one wide receiver. And no disrespect to him, but he was obviously a lot older in the tooth, right? He's still a good wide receiver, but it's not like they had DJ Moore. DJ Moore is in Chicago. You see what Chicago's doing right now, what they're building so they could prepare for Caleb Williams when they select him. They've got weapons. They have Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. They've got, Kmet at the tight end position. They've got a running game. They've got a pretty good defense as well. I had Courtney Cronin from ESPN on my radio show on Monday on Unnecessary Roughness. We're putting together the ultimate mock draft. We're going through it so far, and I've gone through the first three teams. And, she was like, Q, the Bears aren't your average number one overall picking team. They're a 7-win team. So they're actually set up in a better position to embrace a Caleb Williams, especially with the weapons they have. Well, to take it a step further, the Raiders are an 8-win team. So, yeah, the Bears won 7, but remember, the Raiders are picking at 13 for a reason. They've got 8 wins, right? And they got 5 of those down the stretch under AP. So, to me, it feels like, and I've said this before on the show, and again, I like to look at both sides of the conversation because I think both sides of the conversation are very valid arguments, and, of course, they're respectful arguments, but I think that the Raiders are in a good position with the talent that if they're going to give up some draft capital, right, and we all do it, we all go to the mock draft simulators and try to, make it happen. I did it the other day. Matter of fact, I did it on Monday with Pro Football Network. I went on profootballnetwork.com, pfn.com, and went through the mock draft simulator, and I gave up a lot. I gave up a ton because they only allow you to go 2 years out. So it was, 2024 and 2025. They didn't give me 2026 as an option. So I had to give up a lot in 2024 and 2025 to do it, to move to number 2, but I did. I was able to do it. And again, I gave up a ton of draft capital, but I look at the roster and say, if I feel like that quarterback and Jaden Daniels can get the Raiders to the playoffs, then it's worth it. They have not been consistently in the playoffs for how long? How many years? Count them, right? The fact that we know exactly who they played since they were in the Super Bowl, we know how many playoff appearances they've had, 2, in that whole time. That tells you all you need to know. They lost in the first round to Houston, and they lost in the first round to the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's all they have since their Super Bowl loss to John Gruden in Tampa Bay. That's it. So if you feel like, and when I say you, I mean the Raiders, if you feel like that dude, Jaden Daniels, if you get up to number 2 and you could draft him and he can help you consistently get to the playoffs, you could be a consistent player in the playoffs, isn't it worth it? I would think it's worth it. And so that's why I think that their Raiders are going to go all in to try to get it done. Again, it doesn't matter how much you want it and how much you try. If you don't have a partner on the other end, it ain't going to matter. So Chicago, they're not coming off of number 1. They're going to get Caleb Williams. It all starts at number 2 with Washington. And they might not do it either, right? And then if they go, depending on who they get at number 2, maybe the Raiders have a chance at number 3. But really, those are the 2 sweet spots I look at. And really, it's number 2 as far as I'm concerned. But I thought it was pretty good thoughts right there from Adam Rank, and I wanted to pass those along here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up, segment number 3, your calls and text. Draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. The sports calendar is loaded. FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $200 you can use to bet the tournament. We're down to the Final Four when it comes to the men's game and the women's game. Excited about those opportunities. On the men's side of things, it looks like UConn and Purdue are on a collision course for each other to determine who's going to be the champion. And then on the women's side of things, man, all bets are off, right? You got South Carolina going up against NC State, and after Monday night, you've got UConn going up against Iowa. All bets are off. The women's tournament's been fantastic. You could bet on both if you'd like to. So, again, anything for the tournament, Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, so much more, you can use that $200 to bet on. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, make your first bet a big one, and win. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with the 916, Sacramento, California. Sacktown Mark is calling in to talk about the connection between Antonio Pierce and quarterback Jaden Daniels. Here he is, Sacktown Mark.
Hey, Q, this is Sacktown Mark. I just wanted to kind of further the discussion on the connection that AP and Jaden Daniels have. I just think I think it's an amazing connection, obviously, but also it's very unique. It's a very unique connection. It kind of feels kind of divine in a sense, if you will. Josh McDaniels obviously was the head coach this time last year. Every insider said that his job was super secure. Nobody thought he was going to get fired, and here we are a year later, and AP is the coach. And who won the Heisman Trophy? Jaden Daniels, right? It just kind of feels kind of storybook in a way, and I don't remember another situation like this in NFL history, really, where a team like the Raiders has a chance to get a quarterback that just proved he was the best quarterback basically last season in college football. I just think it's kind of amazing, and I think we have to remember that as we talk about trading for Jaden Daniels, because selling the farm it's doing a lot, right? Like we'd be giving up a lot, but that's another piece to this equation that we have to kind of remember, and it has kind of been understated, I think, that we're not just trading for the player, Jaden Daniels, we're trading for that connection. And he already has an amazing connection with not just AP, but the locker room. I mean, he was in the locker room at the last game of the season, right? So he knows a lot of the guys already on the team, and I know they're all rooting for him to be on the Raiders. So, just thought I'd mention that too, that if we do trade for him, Jaden Daniels, we're not just trading for the player, we're trading for that connection, and that will add so much to the culture and the chemistry of the team, and that's just as important as the play on the field. So, just thought I'd throw that out there too. Thank you, Q, for all that you do, and go Raiders.
Mark, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I mean, that's something I've talked about quite a bit is the fact that relationship between Jaden and AP is strong. And also the fact that I know McDaniels didn't do a lot for the team in a successful type matter. And some will say that Dave Ziegler didn't either. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But what they did do is they hired Patrick Graham. What did Patrick Graham do? Bring in Antonio Pierce. So in a weird roundabout way, without McDaniels, without Ziegler, without Graham, there is no AP with the Raiders. So again, everything happens for a reason. It wasn't obviously the greatest year and a half for the Silver and Black under McDaniels, but now the Raiders have AP. And if he turns out to be the head coach that I believe he's going to be, then I think that year and a half of struggle and not liking the Josh McDaniels way is well worth it. If you end up with a head coach that is a really good stinking head coach, right? Somebody who will stop the consistent turnover that you have at that head coaching position. If all of a sudden this AP thing really works out the way I believe it's going to work out, then I'm not even tripping on the year and a half that Josh McDaniels was the head coach, because it was all well worth it because you have AP and potentially have Jaden Daniels as well because of the connection with Antonio Pierce. So I'm good with it. You can get your franchise quarterback and you can get your head coach for the long term to grow together. Yeah, again, sign me up. I'm good with that. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Assassin's Ghost. He says, hey, Q, the Assassin Ghost here. I have two questions. One, if the Raiders trade to 3 and don't get Jaden, isn't it still a win because you have JJ and May to pick from? 2, if we do draft Jaden, do you think we keep both Aiden O'Connell and Minshew? I honestly think if we get Jaden, Anthony Brown will be our third string, similar skill set. Maybe I'm reaching, but let me know your thoughts. Peace. That's from Assassin's Ghost. And thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. And yeah, I think to answer number one, if they trade to number 3 and don't get Jaden and end up with, J.J. McCarthy or Drake May, I don't know how they feel about those guys. I just don't. I think, and this is just my gut feeling, I haven't been told this, it's Jaden Daniels or bust to move up. That's just my gut feeling. That's what I think because of the relationship that we talked about and we've talked about quite a bit with Antonio Pierce and Jaden Daniels. I think that that's the number one goal. I'm not saying that Drake May is not going to be a good quarterback, not saying J.J. McCarthy. I'm still on the fence with J.J. Just because I feel like he's really being media manufactured, and maybe he's not, because everyone's saying that the NFL and the scouts have been talking about him for quite a while, but it just seems like there's all of a sudden this market really to push J.J. McCarthy. So I don't know what's really going to happen come April 25th. Is he going to get drafted as high as people think, or is he going to be a guy that's going to be around 10, 11, 12? Who knows? I think it's all about Jaden Daniels. As far as if they draft him, will they keep O'Connell and Minshew? I think so. I don't see why not, right? I mean, Minshew's got the $15 million guaranteed on his contract, so I definitely see them keeping him. And I think Aiden O'Connell's earned the right to stick around. Now, unless Aiden O'Connell goes to him and was like, hey, I really want the chance to start. I know that Jaden Daniels is going to be your guy. Go ahead and trade me if possible. Then that's another subject. I don't think that that's the case. I think that Aiden O'Connell would definitely stick around, especially because you need quality quarterbacks in the league, right? I mean, we saw 66 guys start in 2023. You need as much as possible, and Jaden Daniels might not be ready to start. I mean, that'd be the good thing. If they do get Jaden Daniels, they don't have to force him on the field immediately because they have two guys with starting experience. But I guess maybe if you could flip one of those guys to a team that may be desperate for a quarterback, maybe there's something there. I don't see it, but again, that's just my gut feeling. I don't know 100%. I'm just, like I said, rolling with what I believe. Assassin's Ghost, thanks so much for the text. I appreciate you. Up next, got a call from my guy, Nate Glass in Cali. He's calling to talk about Jaden Daniels and why he thinks trading the farm is not a good idea. And he has his thoughts on what could happen. Here he is, Nate Glass in Cali.
Hey, Q, Nate Glass from California. I just wanted to speak on the Raiders basically trying to trade up and sell the farm to get Jaden Daniels. Why I disagree with the move. Honestly, I don't know if it's going to work out in Washington for Jaden. Honestly, that's just my deep down feeling. Cliff Kingsbury, I don't really like him as an offensive coordinator. I don't think the situation in Washington is going to work out. So I would take the approach how my Steelers take with, give you 3 examples of guys we knew we wasn't going to get, or guys we knew we wasn't going to get in the draft. Ended up coming to us anyway. One was Dwayne Haskins. We understand the situation, rest in peace, but we knew we wasn't going to get Dwayne Haskins in the draft. We wanted him. We knew he wasn't going to fall to us, but we ended up getting him anyway. It didn't work out in Washington. Another player was Micah Fitzpatrick. Miami didn't use him right. He wanted out. And as soon as he was open for a trade, Mike Tomlin, who we wanted him anyway in the draft, went and got him. You know what I'm saying? So, and then the last player is, who's the last player? Sorry. Dwayne Haskins, Micah Fitzpatrick, and, Justin Fields. We wanted Justin. Tomlin even came pretty clear and said if Justin Fields available for us, we'll take him. He didn't fall to us, but look where he's at right now. So if the situation don't work out in Washington, which I'm expecting it not to, don't be surprised if the Raiders still go get their guy maybe in, 3-4 years, when he's still in his still in his prime, the Raiders go get him in. So don't sell the farm for Jaden Daniels. Just ride it out. Roll with what you got. If you want to roll with Penix, that's fine, whatever. But if you eventually down the line want Jaden, go get him. That's all I have to say, Q. Love the podcast. Listen to it every day. Talk to you soon.
Nate Dogg, thanks, man. I appreciate the call. You know I do, brother. It's always good to hear from you, right? Raider Nation has opened up their arms and accepted you in like one of their own. Even as being a Steeler fan, Raider Nation has accepted you. We appreciate you listening to the show and chiming in. I think you always have some great stuff to say. But Raider Nation doesn't want to wait for their guy. They don't want to wait for the experience to fail in Washington to go get their guy. Like, Steelers ended up with Justin Fields, or the Steelers ended up with Micah Fitzpatrick, or they ended up with Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. The Raider Nation doesn't want to wait for that. Remember that commercial about the money? I want my money and I want it now. That's how the Raiders are. Hell, that's how I am. I want my money and I want it now. Meaning, I want the quarterback and I want him now. I don't want to wait for, in a couple of years, that experiment might not work out and they'll be ready to move on from him. Then you can go get him. Look, in a couple of years, AP might not be the head coach. In a couple of years, Luke Getsy might not be the OC. Couple years, Devontae Adams might not be on the team, right? I mean, there's so many things that can happen in a couple years. You got to get yours, and you got to get now. The team has a roster, I do believe. They have a roster that's built to, get into the playoffs. You get into the playoffs, all bets are off. Anything could happen in the playoffs, especially if you have a quarterback that can make some things happen. And you have that defense that the Raiders have, I'll take that. That defense could get you a long way, and that quarterback could put you over the top. So again, respect the call. I get it in theory, but in realistic times, Raider Nation wants their money, and they want it now. Thanks so much for the call, my man. It's great to hear from you. We'll close out with a text from Ernesto G, living in Dallas, but he's from Inglewood. He said, "What's up, my boy? Ernesto G here from Inglewood, now living in Dallas. Just finished up with Friday's show, and I had a thought. I think in order to get to number 2, we need to trade up to number 5 with the Chargers because I hear they need players bad. We could possibly swap this year's first round, a 4th this year, and a player to seal the deal. Then from there, we propose a trade with Washington. Going from 5 to 2 costs much less, and it's easier to do than going from 13 to 2. At the 5 spot, we offer a swap of 1s this year's plus a number 1 for 2025 and 2026. Love to hear your thought on this. Me and my son, baby Ernie, love the show, and he loves to hear when you read my text on the show. Keep up the great work." That's Ernesto G from Inglewood. Inglewood, always up to no good, living in Dallas. And Ernesto G, thanks for the text, man. I appreciate you. And that's a thought. That is definitely a thought. I've had a few people float that kind of idea at me that they can trade halfway up right now and then find their way the rest of the way. And that would be something. And just like the Vikings set themselves up for success by going and acquiring the 23 overall pick from the Houston Texans, they'll be able to provide that most likely to the Arizona Cardinals, trade up to number 4 and get their guy. The Raiders could do that as well. Trade up to the number 5 spot or the number 6 spot and put themselves in position, to go and make a move the rest of the way. That was something that Tashawn Reed and Vic Tafur had put out there from The Athletic, that the Raiders were actively already trying to get up there to the top, or to the midway up the draft board to try to get there and get themselves in position. So yeah, that's definitely something that could happen. And I mentioned the ultimate mock draft that I'm putting together on Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920. I have my guy Craig Hoffman representing the Commanders on Monday as well. He was doing the number 2 overall pick, and he was telling me that he thinks that Washington wouldn't have a problem trading. They just don't want to trade out to 13. So you could be onto something that number 5, 6, that could be a sweet spot. 5, 6, 7 really could be a sweet spot for Washington if the Raiders were able to get there. So I wouldn't have no problem with that. Again, you're going to have to, if you're the Raiders, basically move a mountain to be able to get to the number 2 spot ultimately and get your guy. But again, going back to segment number 2, if you feel like the roster's in place, if you feel like they're a playoff team, but they're just that quarterback away, you go do it. If you don't feel like that he's that much of a difference maker, you don't make that move because that's a lot to give up. And you still have obviously areas that you need to fill on the team when it comes to the offensive line. I'll say the cornerback position, and others. There's have to haves and like to haves, right? And so you have to decide on what it is and what that dude will do for you at that quarterback position. But that's a really good text, really good thought. I definitely appreciate that. Of course, we'll throw that out there as well. If you want to chime in on that or anything else that you heard on the show, please feel free to hit us up at 707-654-4693. That's going to do it for today's show. Got a call from Henzo from the DMV. Got a text from Means the Raider and Raider Guru. He's back with a call as well. We'll get those coming up on tomorrow's show. We'll get more news and notes around the league and with the silver and black. And, of course, we'll have plenty of conversation as well. Got the trifecta going on today again. The morning tailgate, me and Vinny Bonsignor will be rocking that the next couple days. So you can join us on Raider Nation Radio 920, depending on what time you're listening to this, starting at 7 a.m. We got you covered there. And then, of course, I'll be doing Unnecessary Roughness later on in the afternoon and ESPN Radio's Game Night later on as well. So got it all lined up. This is what we do. We enjoy it. We love being able to talk some Raider football each and every day here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until then, Raider Nation, until tomorrow, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.